Okay. Okay, let's see how this works. Streaming on both. Yep. Set up. Okay. So, yesterday. So yesterday I spent some time cleaning up the Saga stuff, getting that committed. Did a few extra things, which I'm just gonna run through on the stream so it's recorded, just to show some of the magic. Um, so I did get the NuGet packages building and passing, so they're now being published properly. That the answer to that problem for reference was I had the word type here, and it should be types because you can actually give it an array of types to trigger on the release. So you can do it. You can actually trigger processes to start on created, on completed, on published, etc. So that's what I was missing there. That allowed me to get that down to one workflow. So then when I run the actions now, I have a success, which means in turn I have a passing label here. Awesome. I then struggled with NuGet packages in terms of the caching of them is absolutely ridiculous. I waited over 45 minutes and the packages were never there. Right, it never updated to the 0.03 tag. So what I did is I actually created a local Docker-based baguette um, instance, and no, not that one. I'll save that. Is this it? Yes. So then I created a local Docker compose. They give you that command line, so that's fine. Which then allows me to host a local Docker instance of NuGet, and that way I can go to localhost 555, right? And I can see my packages there. So now I've added that as an actual package source. So when I've published a NuGet, what I'll do is I'll download the packages myself and then upload them into this machine so that I have a local cache of them. I can also use this for testing as well if I want to test an interim package. I can do that now without interfering with actual NuGet releases. So this offers me obviously the ability to do 0.04 RC1 and stuff, right? So having the local one does speed up that process. It means I'm not so dependent upon the public NuGet, which will be eventually there, right? So what I'm about to test is so I had an issue in that I was getting an error back when I was trying to register the Auth0 user, right? So I've got to be careful what I actually show on the screen. I've cleared out the users and I want to verify now if I can actually get this user to create. So I just had this user truncate, this truncate, this truncate. So it did highlight a bug, or not necessarily a bug, but a failing in the process, and something I've got to be aware of, and figure out how I'm going to design going forward. So let's do project number 1, Alan sheet. Okay. User by identifier lookup failed. That's not what I expected. Because this should. So I just tested this, right, with I have the thing set up, right? And so this is, I've added my key into Auth0. into the management API. So I authorized, I got the token, I put the token in there so it's got all my permissions, and that way I can test the calls in Auth0. So I should handle that case, right? This should work. So let's have a look and see what it actually returns, because obviously I'm getting user by identifier lookup failed, line 87. But I should be getting 404 because that returns 404. So I'm hitting this exception. But this does again highlight some design issues with the way I've done things here. Oh, did that not compile? Because those breakpoints aren't accessible. Now they're there. I wonder if no, they should turn red. And they're not. Didn't find the associated module. Something's wrong with the build. So it was pulling my old code is what I believe there. Why do you not like any of this? So what I did is I actually refreshed, I reloaded the NuGet NuGet packages last night. So in my attempt to try and get it to update to the latest NuGet, I actually emptied my local NuGet cache. It looks like it's created a massive problem with Rider. So it is building, but that's that's not right. So let's exit there. Let's make sure. Because whenever you've got something like that where it could be a tooling issue, right? I've got a sorry, I'm just watching a dog wander around the living room. Make sure he's not in trouble. Whenever you've got a tooling issue like that, what is causing your issues, right? What is giving you problems? And the fact that I couldn't debug it is another kind of red flag. Okay, so let's try that again. Now, nope, it's going to complain. This is all just from clearing out the NuGet cache, by the way. That's all I did. I did not change the code. So the fact that this is now not working properly is irritating, to say the least. Because yet again, obviously, it's another issue with, yeah, is not found among the loaded symbols. So it's not going to take the latest code. Clean selected projects. Build selected projects. Until I get a breakpoint appearing there, I'm not trusting that this is taking even remote with the latest code. But again, this is why I'm doing this, right? I'm doing this because it's truth, right? This is what application development is. It's not just here's the greatest way to do a thing and then yeah, that's not working. It's not found among reloaded symbols. Did I put it in release mode? No. Let's test something else. Open in, and we know this broke something last time, right? So this could be awesome. Bin and object folders. So now those intermediate files that this creates are gone. So a build of this is, I don't know why that's erroring though. That should not cause an error. So this is just because I don't have a secure certificate enabled on the local package management, right? I could disable that package manager when I'm not doing everything else because it's there now. But now you're going to throw an error on that one. Assets file, project assets, JSON not found. Why is that looking in there? You should be able to clean an object folder. Run NuGet package restore. .NET restore. Things I would hope I wouldn't have to do. I suppose it's got to be something to do with the, because the only difference with that package, that place specifically, is obviously my code generation stuff. So I'm going to assume it's something to do with that, but still can't place a breakpoint. Dev prototypes, author registry is not found among the loaded symbol documents. I figured someone would be that. So the problem is I've just deleted the bin and object folders, right? So that isn't going to solve my problem. I'm not running it in. I'm not running it in release mode. Right, everything's build. No dependencies, which is kind of the design, right? I shouldn't have too many dependencies. Like these can depend on this can depend on these, but these can't depend on anything but shared folders. Shared is the only global piece. So it's not one thing, it's definitely another. It was being optimized. There's no optimization. I'll verify. So nullable references, C# 12, NuGet, no package produced from it, signing, build events, debug, no optimize, checked. It's the defaults. Really? So it'll work if I do it that way. Oh, that's... What? Let's see. Who? Add request. So what did I send? I sent this string. Or rather, I sent this string. So let's have a look. Services there. So I sent that request. So go over here, go to this, and paste that in there. I get a 404. Not a bad request. So that's building that same API request, right? Let's go into /users/ID. Let's verify that that's exactly the endpoint I'm trying to use. API v2 users slash API v2 users slash liquid squat liquid blah, 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 blah. Oh dear. So the request was going to that URL. It was a get. Add my bearer token. Right. Request. Headers. Authorization. Bearer. Oh, there's no. That would be a bad request then. Access token is null. Yeah, that'd be a problem. That'd definitely be a problem. So the problem there is I'm not doing authentication, so I'm not doing this before. Let's see if that now starts and debugs. Place all wraps. I need the stack to start, otherwise nothing's going to work. Oh, Essa, sorry, my apologies. I did not see the YouTube message. And Amal, good morning. Hope you're both well. Apologies. Another great live broadcast has started. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that you enjoy these things. And my apologies for being so. I see that again. That's not working. So if I do that, it works. No problem. It's okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you watching, and I appreciate the fact that you do get something from these videos. So if I manually debug it, I'll have to look through the configuration afterwards, because there's no reason that should change anything. But either way, let's test that once more, he says. And then I'll go over the actual problem that this identifies. Okay, response code is 404. So we are now authenticated. That was the problem. So is user registered? So this checks this is the code in the workflow, right? So it checks to see if it's registered. If it's not, it will register. If it is, it will update. Okay, so we have registered user. That went through okay. So we should now have an address. A Saga should have started. Oh, come on. We had that working the other day, so I didn't think that would fail. That's okay. That is okay. Let's remove any breakpoints. Tenant management, infrastructure, Auth0 user registry. Okay. So what that should have done and didn't do is begin a saga. So we need to kind of identify what didn't I do there. Right? So that's trait number 4. And then here we do need to find the owner, Miles. So I need a different user. I need to create a new user, right? And I want to see that it gets into those events. And I have the database stuff configured. So the challenge here is by using NuGet packages in your development, right? I can't debug the persistence component of the SQL Server component, right? So I can't debug the persistence of the Saga, which is a problem, right? One usages of handle. Why is there no usage of user was verified? We'll worry about that afterwards. There should be one, right? It should generate one. It's not generating the I handle instance. We should at least get to tenant user was registered or tenant user was verified and tenant was registered. Definitely. So project number 4, let's send that. We do not. So why do we not? So the way the Saga should work is these source generators. So tenant user was registered, tenant was registered. So here's the tenant was registered, right? Oh, I know why. I better know why. Notifications. Okay. Oh, it does have it. It does have it. It does have it. Huh. Tenant user was verified. Tenant is ready. This doesn't need. This does need IO orchestration. Pretty much everything that goes through every event or every notification that goes through a Saga would need the IO orchestrated notification, right? Because it's what indicates to the actual code that it can pull the ID that it needs, which again right now is a GUID. So my cup, I don't know if you can see it, is I got it appropriately for developing what I'm doing. So it says, let's put this in the backlog, right? And then on the other side, it has person throwing the throwing it in the bin. So good morning, daughter. How you doing? So why doesn't that trigger that? So the workflow hasn't changed, right? The register new tenant workflow hasn't changed. We had Sagas functioning. So it publishes tenant user was registered, and we are subscribers to that, right? Because tenant was registered. We don't need to care about here anymore, but we do care about in tenant was registered here, right? So we are listening to my notification handle of tenant was registered. The strange part here is in here, I believe, yeah. Yeah, we're not getting the registrations. So this is why Mediator's so much faster than Mediator. So Mediator, Jimmy Bogart's version, uses reflection, I believe, to identify the handles, etc., and then kind of caches that, and so it's expensive, and so it also does some memory allocation. This just literally creates the DI registry of all the things it needs to do based off your code. So when I save that, it should have. So the problem is, and it was working before, right? Try add subscribers, tenant user was registered handler. So it's not finding the new code is the problem, right? Because it should find those super long class names with our Saga name in it, but it's not doing that. So I don't know why. Because it did. It worked. We definitely saw it work. Reboot Roslyn source generators. Because this should be registered as a handler in there, right? Because this Saga started by event handler generator. And I think we can probably find some better name. No, maybe not. Hey Decidius, thank you for the look. I appreciate it. So this handler, they're using. I don't know the difference between incremental right this second. I suppose it could be down to. It's just not registering those sagas. So if we go here, right, iNotification handler, tenant user was registered. You see the 3 usages, and those usages are in Mediator. I should expect to see the same things here. That's why I knew that something was wrong. This project is determined to keep me slow, isn't it? It's determined to, but again, all this stuff, if I get over this stuff, if I learn about the how to debug, if I learn about all these pieces now, my application development will accelerate. Because once I've got the pieces in place, I can just focus purely on the application. I don't have to worry about these underpinnings things and doing them as a. Because if I go 2, 3, 4 months of development and I've built this massive application and I then decide to introduce something, it's a lot more work than it is to try and do it now. Well, I haven't got really very much working, but I've got these pieces. So it might seem wasteful, but, and again, sharing it on the stream, maybe the key is not continue introducing new things you have to learn. Right. That's like kind of what I'm saying, right? Is I want to learn this now, right? So in this case, this solves a problem. I could handwrite these for every single thing. That is an alternative option, right? So now we've got this Saga piece in. I don't need to do the generator piece. The generator piece is a nice add-on. I could remove the generator piece, write those handlers by hand, and it would still use the Sagas, right? That is an option. But again, I'm early on in the development enough that I can kind of work with this technology, see if it does, see what the challenges are, make that decision, and I don't then have to worry. I can proceed with the application. But yeah, you are right. It's pick your poison and stick with it, right? But in terms of future application development, right? This pattern, if this works fine, it's really useful because it means that accelerated development is not only my accelerated development, is if someone else gets on. Better the poison you know than the one you don't. To some extent. But if you've got time, which I do right now, like that's kind of basically go with what you know and don't move beyond it, right? Because everything else is poison. Right? If you've got to do something quickly, then absolutely you have to do what you know, because if you don't do what you know, that quickly is kind of an unknown, right? This is an unknown. I didn't expect to hit this today, right? I had the pieces wired up. I'd done the publishing of the packages, like I said I would do at the end of the stream last night. I ran out of time, so I couldn't actually verify the message, which would have been ideal. But again, I have the time right now. If I don't have the time, and let's say I've agreed to deliver something on this project to someone in 2 weeks' time, then absolutely, right this second, I am stopping this. I'm handwriting those sagas, and I'm doing it, right? So what we'll verify right the second is I'm going to write this. I'm going to copy this handler out, right, and verify it's a source generator problem. Great mediator implementation without reflection of the series gives us great perspectives. Good. I'm happy that it's allowing you to get some insights. Yeah, I switched to using mediator this implementation pretty early on in this because I did some reading, and Alou the Crow was a streamer I was watching, and they were kind of criticizing mediator. And I didn't want to try and get in a conversation, but I went and did a bit of studying. And if you look at the metrics and the stats on the performance of this one, I'm not going to get to the need. I'm not going to get to the differences of performance. Like, I doubt for a very long time I will hit any challenges that wouldn't have also been solved by mediator. I'm gonna figure out how to say them. Like, naming the package after the pattern is kind of tough. So I don't think I would have noticed the differences, but definitely it is a lot faster. And the fact that it source generates means that there's no reflection at all. It's just A to B dependency injection works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that class out, and let's create a handlers folder here, and let's create the tenant registration saga tenant user was registered again handler. No, I don't want to put it in source control, right? And I want to take that part up there, and there we go. Okay, so that immediately built. Yes, OpenTelemetry is on my list of technologies to learn about and add in. I was going to tinker with it early on, but I felt that I didn't know enough about the pieces, and I didn't know enough about my application to understand what it is I wanted to do. So yeah, it will be there later. The plan is to add it definitely. But again, I want to approach that from an analysis point. I want to say, hey, what do I actually want to do? Because I'm a big believer in not logging. By the way, I don't like logging for the sake of logging. Using it as a debugging tool is a crutch. You should be able to debug. This is, again, what this is verifying, right? This is testing my ability to debug. It's testing my ability to work with the platform. I'm understanding some of those lessons. Too often we kind of fall back on a solution because it's quicker, again, because it's quicker, and we have to solve something, right? So I've got to balance that out. But again, that immediately created that. So why won't these work? These did work. We know they worked. My bet is that once they do work, they'll continue to work, but there's no issues there. It's found the right application paths. You can build cleanly. Yeah, there's a lot of technologies I think that are worthwhile looking to put into this stack. That again I will be able to stretch my legs on a little bit and learn a little bit more about. You know, once it gets to a certain point, I will spend some time building out a Kubernetes cluster and getting these pieces deployed in there. That I probably will not stream because, having gone through that before, that is an incredibly time-consuming piece, and it is incredibly, for me, trial and error. Cloud-based deployment is something that I probably won't look at doing for the time being, purely because I don't want to run that cost up. You know, I do not earn enough money to be able to pay for this sort of deployment. Um, so so why are you not building what you did before? Is it to do with that? That's the one thing I just didn't do, didn't I? So let's have a look. Let's see if it shouldn't. That should not cause a problem, right? That should not cause um, tenant registration test Saga handler. I thought I added it. Yeah. So if I do partial class, I handle I notification handler tenant was registered. Uh, tenant user was tenant user registration test Saga handler. Oh, okay, that's triggering now. Why don't you trigger? Okay, they're gone. TBD Saga generators install. Let's see if regenerating the. I'm wondering if the partial class has anything to do with it, but the other one finally worked. I don't know why I made them partials. Let's just test that again. I want to see if test Saga handler. Doesn't matter what I do it. Cancel. Partial class. I notification handler. Tenant was registered. Nah, I find it immediately. Oh, there. Okay, it did find it. Okay, so it's nothing to do with partial class. Just making sure I didn't leave any mess there. So this is 100% the problem, right? This is not registering itself with the mediator in implementation. I've restarted the Roslyn thing. So I have learned that this is kind of temperamental. To tell you what, let's do this. Let's do it this way. for the sake of moving on and not messing around with this, or tell me you can, no, I can't copy them. That'd be nice. For the sake of moving on, let's create them as actual classes, right? And disable the generators. And I'll come back around on that later. That's the middle ground, right? There's no harm in doing this. All the generators do is save that repetitious work. And now I could build an abstract class if I wanted to. Because you can see there's quite a lot of repetition in here. And then we need that one. I'm still going to keep the name because it's kind of very explicit and you shouldn't have to worry about it, is the kind of purpose. I might create the base class though, just to. So again, you do not have to use the source generated version. Is the purpose. Tenant user was verified. Tenant user was registered. Oh, tenant user was registered. Yeah, tenant user was verified. Did not copy the contents of that one in. Let's go there. And there. And then just for making sure that I don't create a conflict, I'll remove the generators from here. Now, as long as this piece is doing its work, right, I don't mind. So let's have a look in here now and see that it generated. And there we go. That's what it should have looked like in the first place. See all these handlers? They are there now. So, not ideal. So the difference in these handlers is this is a started by handler, right? So it will generate a new saga if one is not there. This one will just exit if it doesn't find the saga. So if you send, if the saga doesn't exist and it receives a user was verified, it won't matter. It won't do anything, right? It won't kick into life a new saga or anything, right? That's the goal there, and that's correct in terms of behavior. Okay, well that's not ideal, but it does at least allow me to move on and test, which is the key component of what I'm trying to do, which is move towards this workflow. Let's do the actual stack. So we'll create number 5. Yep. And this will be Frank Jones. F. Jones. Okay. So if this works correctly, right, this saga I should hit the breakpoints in, right? He says as it isn't actually doing that piece. Why are you not actually? So this is in the application, the tenant management application debug. That makes me think that I've gone and broken something by clearing out packages and whatnot, and that really upsets me because it shouldn't that sort of stuff. If you check it out to your machine or I check it out to my machine and stuff, that's going to create different behavior, and that sort of stuff will sink time because another developer might check this code out, right, and work on it, and then go to debug it, and that doesn't happen or something, and then they spend hours trying to fix it because they think they've broken it. Okay, so we create tenant number 5. We hit, there's our saga. There's our next event. User is registered. Okay. That's not actually a thing. User was verified. It's tenant user was verified. There we go. So we changed that already. And yeah, user was verified is not even in there, so that's fine. Okay, so we should have a Saga. So we have a user, Frank Jones. We have some tenant users, some tenants. There's tenant number 5. We have some tenant addresses. We should have a Saga. There we go. There's our orchestration identifier, which is our tenant. So 46E should be, yeah, there we go. 468. I can read, honestly. Hi, Thorolf. How you doing? For me, it's going okay. I have just had to overcome a bit of a design problem. Or not a design problem, a compilation problem. I suppose it's working in an inferior language like C#, right? I'll have to join different ranks to experience true good programming. So this is saving the state. So user was registered and tenant is registered, right? So I received those events. Tenant was registered, tenant user was registered. So I now have part of the chain done. So complete is if the state is tenant registered, user verified, right? This event doesn't happen. That's okay. Tenant user was verified is the one we're going to need. So let's go make sure that pipeline's in place. I thought you were kidding when you told me to store JSON in the DB. As the C++ increment. There, I didn't see that. Hey, Rockstone. Hey, Decidius. How you doing? So, okay, let me explain. Just for my own defense, because if defaults comes in, he's going to get all bent out of shape about me storing JSON in the database. This is not being queried. I'm using it for serialization and deserialization only. It is state that is serialized into the database. I could binary serialize this. I could do all manner of things with it. It is the quickest and easiest way to debug this stuff, and it doesn't cost any more because the column is going to take what the column is going to take. If I had a need to query that data, right, which SQL Server in 2022 has now added the ability to query JSON that MySQL has had for a few years, and that MySQL stuff is not slow, by the way. Whether it's good or not is another thing, right? Sorry, I spaced out there for a second. I'm fighting my tiredness at work, and I'm actively losing. Oh no, oh no. I will be honest. I have fallen asleep at work before. So storing JSON in a database is not the end of the world, right? It is not the most ideal solution. However, if you're using it to store, yeah, me too. If you're using it to store things that should be columns, then you're doing it wrong. Absolutely, right? But sometimes it's okay to store that, especially if it's an unknown object, right? If that's because I use this a lot, right? Because it does work, right? This is storing that Saga state. That Saga state is going to recover itself and be fine, right? It will deserialize as an object. I'm not querying on it. I'm not basing any data decisions on it. It's perfectly fine. So yeah, I will defend putting JSON in the database. It is okay. It is not the end of the world. Okay, so now I need to verify my user, right? So I need the path in place. So my first challenge is, what is this called, right? So I have tenant, I can patch a tenant to update them, I can list tenants, I can register. What can I do? What do I want to do here? It's definitely in this piece, the tenant management piece, right? I'm going to confirm. Apex, good morning. Especially if you're prototyping, JSON could be nice and quick to keep you going. Yeah, it's not the end of the world, right? I have seen. So the problem is when application developers go near a database, right? if they do not do databases normally, right? Structuring tables is hard. So what happens is they either align their tables to their objects 100%, or they try and figure out how something kind of groups. So what ends up happening is you need to keep adding columns, right? Addresses, um, you know, tenants, etc. Oh, well, that's a setting on a tenant, so let's, what color did they use? Oh, that's a tenant setting, so let's add, user color. Let's add their billing date. Oh, let's add that on there. Let's add that on there. Let's add that on there. Right. Some of those things are actual things you need to query. Some of them might not be even. They might be profile level things. So why keep sticking them in the database? And also, now your schema is changing every time. Once you deal with the schema change, you've got to deal with deployment of that schema. So migrations or scripts to do the migrations. So it becomes a management nightmare. So, and the bigger the application gets, the harder that gets to track, the harder that gets to find a bug in, and the more problematic it becomes. You're making me appreciate I don't work with a database. Some days it would be nice. So, and it is exactly why in this stack I am investigating using other options for the data, right? Because each part of your application has a different purpose, right? If I want to search stories, right, then I should not be using a table for stories that also is used for search, because it's not the optimal solution. The thing that I use to store the data is not necessarily the thing I need to query the data from, because I can use a more optimized approach to the query. So in this instance, what I've tested, and again, it's only a test. It's not the now I've got to figure out the ports and everything, and I've got like 1,000,001 different things going, right? Which one is it that one? Yeah, here we go. So in this case, I'm experimenting with Couchbase. So Couchbase allows you to create a bucket, and in a bucket, I can do scopes. And those scopes are tenants, right? And then in each tenant, I have the collection. So I want to create tickets, I can go in here and create the tickets. JSON, right? So I can store this information. Now, if I need to search this information, this might not be the best platform for the search. I might create a different system for Elasticsearch and use the events that I publish to populate that data. But then I can produce the most optimized solution. So storing JSON in a database, coming back to that point, isn't the end of the world. It does allow me to do this. It means that if I have different state, I don't have to capture, because I've seen solutions, by the way. So in this instance, right, is tenant registered, is user registered, are flags on my state. I now have a different Saga that deals with, sorry if I keep waving around, there's a little fly that's flying right in front of my face. If I have a different Saga that has different data, right, maybe it captures user information, maybe it captures something else, and it gets stored in this database. I've seen solutions that will have every column possible for every Saga. But now I add a new Saga or new data, this table gets incrementally big, and I also have to do migrations on it. So storing JSON in a database is not the end of the world. Thank you. So, my apologies for that little rant. But that doesn't fit in Twitch chat very easily when Deflux normally has a go at the whole store JSON in the database thing. So what's the most appropriate endpoint here? Verify, I think. So I post to verify. Let's try that. So if you haven't seen it before, the technology I'm using here is called API endpoints. So .NET API by default uses controllers. Thank you. My daughter loves saying that. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Um, uh, a default .NET API comes with controllers, and controllers are great overall, but as I put it, they become a dumping ground for functionality. So what happens is you end up with a controller that does too much. So you have weather forecast controller. Oh, well, I need to query the weather forecast. Oh, let's get from the weather forecast. Let's add to the weather forecast. Oh, I need to get who users that are associated with the weather forecast. Is that the user's controller? Or is that the weather forecast controller? Let's stick it in the weather forecast controller. So they become, again, similar to the database. They become like, oh, it must fit into one of these buckets. Therefore, that's the most appropriate place for it. So Ardalis, or Steve Smith, great developer, amazing videos. I highly recommend you look him up if you haven't seen his stuff before. But he has this library called API endpoints, and it really aligns to how I think about code. So I picked this up very quickly because I'd actually tried to implement this myself, and it fits neatly with Mediator, and it just works. So the idea is, and I think this is a pattern he kind of promotes. I don't know, but I kind of adapted it and use it. I didn't see the notification on the ad break. I'm going to wait out the ad break on Twitch, just in case anybody was paying attention to that. So the goal here, just in brief, is to create an endpoint that is to verify. Then we'll call that verify and prove that the Saga completes and deletes itself. That will verify that Saga piece, and it will verify that I can then publish that extra event, right? So the idea will be this publishes tenant is ready. What Twitch channel? Yeah, the Twitch stream is TBD Gamer on Twitch. Yeah, so the challenge of running two streams at once, right? So a YouTube and a Twitch stream, is that I don't know when ads run on YouTube, right? They happen whenever YouTube wants to play them. I think on Twitch I can kind of control it a little better, in that I can say, hey, it's going to go every 30 minutes, and you're going to see a minute and a half of ads. So there's 3 minutes an hour, and at 3 minutes an hour they'll reduce the pre-rolls so people get into the stream quicker. So anyway, welcome back from the ad break if you were on the ad break. Okay, so the ultimate goal here is to publish this event, right? So again, Ardalis' endpoints library, it's just API endpoints. It just fits neatly with the way I think about things. So in this verify, I'm going to do endpoint base async with request. I do like to do this. I like to put my parameters objects inside, and this would be public string user identifier, and I'll go into that in a second why that's a string now, but it's a null. It's a GUID ultimately, and that kind of goes into the part of the point of where do you draw the line at exposing which technology you're using, because again, I'd like to abstract this so that I could swap out my authentication provider, but in reality it's not that achievable, right? You have to at some point have specificity, and this is going to return an action result. So now let's implement that. I like to move that above because that's the most important piece of the work, right? It's not the parameters, right? And again, I'm trying to be consistent here. I'm trying to develop this consistency where I will always post parameters. I will always return results or whatever. And it helps clean this up. This all stays self-contained. I'm not creating post, verify post parameter view models, etc. Those things are here. I may still create view models as a separate layer, but those are truly because the query layer will pull the data and return it up through this. So in here, I need to take an iMediator dependency. Welcome to my TED Talk about upping your C++ game. Simply declare int c equals 0 in the for loop. Remember the C++ at the end. Thanks for listening. At least several people in this chat will actually understand the context of this conversation. That's not mediator. Mediator. And I don't want to. Really? You think the base class is a mediator implementation now? Okay. So this should be simple, right? This should be mediator.send await async. So we're going to send, and here what we are going to send is, so the tenant registration saga is completed by the tenant user was verified, but we don't know the tenant user. So in the subscribers, we have user was verified, right? So we're going to publish user was verified. In here, this will go and figure out the tenants, because again, if a user has registered multiple tenants and has not confirmed their email, the first one they confirm their email on will confirm it for everyone and say, yes, these tenants are valid. I don't know if I want to support that use case. If you haven't confirmed your account, I think I should throw an exception. But yeah, we'll tackle that later. But for right now, it's a use case. So this user verified will publish tenant user was verified. So in here, I just need to publish user. Let's say user was verified. Yes, was verified. Dot new dot. Did I not create this? Here's the notifications. Yes, they're not. That's not really something I want to make a notification, is it? Not a subscriber. This is a command. This is not user was verified. Right? This is verify user. I'll show you why that stops becoming a handler now. So this is not this, right? Public class handler. So public record command GUID GUID user identifier is an iRequest that sends a result. Another Ardalis library, by the way, result. This allows you to wrap up success, failure in a kind of generic way and pass that back up so you can kind of respond to that. It's very nice. Hi, Chris. Hope you're well. What app are you making? So I am building, I'm aiming to build an Agile project management platform. So I have a lot of experience working with other platforms, and they do great at some things, but they do terrible at other things. And it's something I feel passionate about is developer productivity and good software in general. So I'm going to try and attempt to build an application. This is aimed at being a product. So, you know, it will be something I develop on stream, show the pieces of, show the actual steps I'm going through to try and build this application, the technologies I'm using, etc. So right now we're working on API level stuff. Ultimately, this will evolve to become, you know, putting UIs on top of there, using the APIs effectively, all those sorts of things. And right now I'm just dealing with the registration of a user. Okay, so this is iHandle. So Mediator, by the way, introduces a little bit more specificity around its command query stuff. So over Mediator. So Mediator, you have a request and you have a handler. In Mediator, it gives you actual command and query handlers, and it actually has an iQuery type, etc. So it kind of allows you to specify. That's pretty sick. How far are you into the project? I am realistically just starting. I'm a couple of weeks in coding. I'm kind of prototyping still to make sure that I get some of the foundation pieces the way I want them. So kind of working with, right now, this last week, we've kind of worked on this concept of a Saga, extending Mediator to its notification system, kind of listening to that and joining these pieces together. And yeah, just really at the start overall. So this is a command handler of command and returns a result. You want convertible to command I request. Record must be convertible to I command. It wants specificity again. Okay. So it supports the generic version, but it actually allows you to do the specific version. No worries, Chris. Sorry for interrupting often. I've never coded in C#, but might follow along the journey. Absolutely, feel free. I'd appreciate it. Again, for those new in the stream, I am doing this on stream, right? But I'm not doing all of this on stream. I will be doing stuff on my personal time as well. The aim of doing it on stream is to kind of show the pieces of, and as we've seen many times, some of the pains of application development, some of the just common things that you go through, some of the decision-making processes. I am perfectly okay if I get no code written on the stream, if the conversation is useful and effective for everybody else involved, right? So if it's a personal, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? I'll entertain that a little bit because I don't mind helping if I can. But it shouldn't derail the stream from kind of the focus, which is helping share an experience with everybody else. But I also don't mind talking about what I'm doing and spending more time investigating. And I'll repeat again for I'll have to get the bot up and running. So we might actually end up doing some bot development on Friday, putting some semantic kernel and stuff in there and trying to get some help stuff in there. But some of these pieces I will open source, right? Some of the pieces I will actually share. And if you feel that I'm working on something that could be shared or would be useful for everybody else, I don't mind discussing the possibility of that and breaking it out and doing that piece. And again, that helps share with everybody else, right? Here's how it works to bring out a library and build it on that. So feel free if you are. So I'm interested to know, okay, so that's what that does. So it takes the command. What's the difference there though? Async, oh, that's a command. That's the command. So yeah, I mean, if you are enjoying this stuff, if you want to know more about this stuff, there's you know I don't like doing the like, share, subscribe thing on YouTube. Obviously, subscription is kind of a different thing than Twitch. But yeah. That makes 100% sense. At the end of the day, if this is going to be a product, it would be ridiculous to show the source code to your competitors. Yeah, I mean, again, you'll see a lot of code, but you won't see all the code, and you'll never, my ideas are going to be my ideas up until the point I actually implement them, right? So I'm not scared um, about stuff. And at the end of the day, if anybody who develops the software professionally is watching and thinks the ideas have merit and they get implemented, then everyone benefits anyway, so it doesn't hurt. So there is a Discord if you wanted to join it. I'll paste that in both um, to discuss any more stuff like this, ask questions, etc. So what I'm changing here is verifying the user is a command. It is not a notification to the system, right? The notification is that a tenant user was verified, because now I have tied those pieces together and I can publish an event to say, yep, this user is verified. It doesn't do anything in this system, right? This user verify right now doesn't change my user in any single way. So we do this. What are you complaining about? What don't you like? Return result dot success. So in this case, what I'm going to do is return result dot not found. I'm also using another library called specifications from Ardallis again, which allows me to do a little bit, wrap up the query part nicely, right? So in this handle, I have a specification. This specification is linked to Entity Framework and dictates, here's how I go and find this user. So off this user identifier, go and find me the tenant identifier of that user, right? And I can reuse this pretty quickly. So underneath this is going to build the SQL, but it allows for some readability in the code, right? So tenant identifiers, I list from the tenant user repository using the tenant identifier from user identifier spec, and I pass in the user identifier. So that's a pretty nice library. Okay, so we have a command. Sometimes what I've done here is I've created a public static. Let's see if it knows what I'm doing now. I command result send, right? And the only reason being, I feel that oh, there you go. I feel that new here kind of blurs it a little bit, but in the same, that send is a double, so I'm not sure what send would look like, but I'm going to keep using this pattern for now. It's just so I don't have to do new verify user dot command, right? It just cuts that out. But yeah, anyway, this isn't going to work right this second because because this is going to come in with auth pipe grid. So for right now, I'm going to use the quick and dirty method, which is dot replace with that. So it isn't prettiest, but yeah. Var result equals this, and then return. That's not a thing. Result dot is success. Okay. Bad request. Right. I don't want to leak any information up beyond, right? If someone tries this endpoint and they pass in a GUID and I say, nope, this user isn't found, I'm just going to say bad request, right? I'm not going to tell them that it's a good request or not. So again, that's another layer that I would have to review later on and go over and strengthen. But it's a little too premature to start doing that sort of stuff. So before I go too far, let me raise a major issue with what I'm doing here in terms of its behavior. It is not resilient. The eventing piece of this notification, right, is it's synchronous. So when I go in my workflow and I fire off Yeah. Breakout user exists, user create and register. I kind of did that a little bit, but let's just do that. When I fire off this workflow, right, it's synchronous, essentially, because it's waiting on every piece to happen. So register new tenant fires, right? Register new tenant is here where we send a command, and then if that's successful, we then publish an event, right? This published event is then picked up by the things that work on it. It's not fired and then eventually gets there. So this saga is being executed in there. If a step fails, all of this is left in kind of a limbo state. Right. The other pieces don't happen. This tenant can't be corrected. There's no recovery from this. So I am going to have to consider what a recovery looks like later on, right? Is it I know that it got so far, so therefore I can clean it up. And Mr. Anhorn asked about this the other day because he was kind of showed some interest in potentially using this library because it does kind of solve some problems. But it would need to do kind of a rollback, right? So based upon its state, it would have to roll things back or whatever. So I don't know how that looks right now because ultimately, it's made to kind of join these events together. But a rollback on this is kind of a design implementation that I haven't got to, and right now I don't want to worry too much about. But it is something that I should consider down the line because if it doesn't succeed, right, it kind of relies on everything succeeding. So yeah. So that's the saga. So I should now be able to go here, go to, not quite. So I need to authorize, what do I need to authorize? No, I don't need to authorize this. This is not an authorized call. This is just a HTTP post. And I'm going to post to verify. So the URL will look like, it's tenant management still. It will be a post to HTTPS API / verify for right this second. Oh, that's a good point. Let's do user ID, do it that way, equals auth pipe. Good. It'll look something like that. In here, I will say from query user ID. Oh, I think that needs name equals user ID. And I can do, don't think I need to explicitly state that one, but I've had some challenges with that recently. So one of the things I do differently, obviously, with my stream is I don't have music playing. I don't have kind of sound effects or anything like that. So it is kind of a drier stream. I understand that. Primary reason is that I do not want any issues with any sort of copyright or any challenges. What I'm trying to do is present what I'm doing and answer any questions or discuss what we're doing. So that's why my stream's a little bit different than a lot of streams. I also don't need music to code by. I actually get distracted now by music when I'm coding, so perfect silence works for me as well. I apologize if that makes the stream a little bit less easy to listen to as background. Okay, so we should be in a point where we can test this now. So our Saga exists. So we need a user, and this is our user. So what we're going to do is we're going to post that user. Does this work? No, it doesn't. So let's go here and That's that. That's what it's actually going to look like. Yeah, Auth0 store is all lowercase, and it shouldn't matter from a parsing perspective, but I want to make sure that's not an actual issue to start with. So let's start up the project. Okay, so that started. So we need to go to the tenant management. So this is listing on 7194. So localhost 7194. So we should be able to get to our breakpoint. Cross fingers. Again, because of the way that mediator works, this should have been registered, right? This handler is registered. It should be. And this should reach here and yeah, get there. Okay, so let's try that. Step 1, done. We have a request. It has a user identifier, right? Step 2. The method or operation is not implemented. Tenant is ready handler. Oh. That's interesting. Did I not put... Huh. It worked because it published that. I just didn't have a handler for it. Awesome. No, I do have it. Why isn't it registered though? Tenant is ready. We are close. We are close to this piece being finished. We can move on to stories, which gets into more technology stuff. Why didn't that fire? iNotification handler. So the error was method or operation is not implemented. Tenant is ready handler. Tenant is ready handler, line 18. Okay. Maybe today's been longer than I thought it was. It did exactly what it should have done. Right? It threw a not implemented exception. It is not implemented. That is quite correct. Wow. Professional, by the way. Await publisher dot publish async. Okay. So I've literally taken over a week and a half to get back to an event publishing that I had. Right? I have been waiting a week and a half to write this actual event. So, tenant created, company name, right? I obviously don't have that, right? So I need to go and get the tenant repository. Repository, tenant. So the beauty about this RDLS library is, I don't have to create an implementation of every repository. If I want access to a collection in the entity framework context, I just do this, right? That will now give me access essentially to the DB set. And yes, we can have the whole discussion about entity framework is already a oh, what I did there. Entity framework is already a repository, blah, 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 blah. That conversation always happens. You need to wrap layers around some of this stuff just to make it a little bit more manageable. I'm not benefiting too much from I'm not splitting too far away from entity framework. If I change my database technology, this may or may not work exactly the same. So yeah. Okay. So app break again. Let's do this. So we need to do var tenant equals await tenant repository single default async new entity by identifier spec notification dot tenant identifier cancellation token if tenant is null. That would be a major error in the system. That would be a major catastrophic failure. So for those who haven't been in here before and looked at this project, I'm differentiating a table level ID, so an ID at the table that is used for indexing and for a primary key, is not what I'm referring to as an identifier. An identifier is a publicly shareable identifier that if I was to export the table and re-import it, I would still get that record, even if it got a different ID underneath. So the idea is that I have a constant identifier that is never database specific. Also means I can change the format of the data, I can change the schema. As long as I have that identifier, it doesn't matter. I can still get that thing. So using the specification, we've created a generic spec, entity by identifier spec, which allows single or default. We pass in our tenant identifier. If the tenant's null at this point, that's a major issue for the application. Throw an exception. There's no try catches, etc. up the line, so it just throws straight up. And then publish async. This piece is to Kafka. This now distributes this tenant to other systems. So what we should see happen here is when this goes through, this tenant should appear in here. All things being well, right? Because that event hasn't been created yet, right? So we should see that get created in here, and then we should have access to that tenant, because now that tenant has been confirmed. And again, this is exactly why I've gone through all this, is because I do not want to create that data until I am confident that the user actually exists, because I'm trying to make sure that if this were to go into the cloud, I don't rack up the expenses day one, right? So let's see if that works. This is an abstraction around Kafka publishing or Kafka producers. Again, the intent there being that ultimately an outbox will get used, so that this will not publish to the Kafka piece, this will publish to an outbox, and that event will then get stored. And guess what I'm going to store the outbox in? SQL Server. And guess how I'm going to serialize those objects? Yep. JSON. Okay, so that started one project. I need the entire application stack running here. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated, because now multiple pieces are in play, right? So when I publish this event, Kafka picks it up. Kafka will track it. So again, I can actually watch that a little bit, right? So nice tools in here. I have tenant created. This isn't stunning, so I do have another tool. Hi, Windows 11, you are utter cack. Car Where is it? I have another tool, he says boastfully, and then can't find the tool because he can't open a window. I have two monitors by default, and everything pops up on the other monitor. Kardec. There we go. So I can actually look at Kafka. This will give me some indication, but it won't let me really. I can consume it, I think. Yeah, I can create a consumer. Here you go. Start consuming. So if I fire the event now, I should see the event appearing here. Right? Just another example of JetBrains Rider being a better tool. There you go. It completed. There's my event. Right? And look, oh look how it serializes it. JSON. I'm only doing that because I think Deflux is in. So there's my event. So now we should, if things are still working, we should see a tenant appearing here for 468. That's the tenant, right? 468 EE56. Yep, there's our tenant. So now we have two collections, and our collection, this tool needs some work. Project number 5. And there we go. Now, if I refresh that Saga, did it get, and the Saga got removed? So apart from getting rid of the entire focus of 2 days worth of work, it does work. So now the system is distributed that event, and I have a different system now has that tenant. And now with that in place, right, I also should have a user over here, Frank Jones, that should have that tenant. That's set as Frank Jones's tenant. It's in his available list of tenants, right? So now if I log in as Frank Jones to the wonderful front-end app and get a token, I should be able to create a ticket as Frank Jones. How confident am I that I'm that lucky today is the question. So we go over here. This is called placeholder login. It is a dummy, just a dummy up app to allow me to get the tokens so I can actually test the login path. I intend to put no UI on this until I have at least the basic structure fully working under an API, right? Because I do not want to focus my application on how it looks. I want to focus it on what it does. Hey, Chris Jones, how you doing? I can actually see you now. Yes, and in a scary amount of detail, as I've realized. I've watched back one of the VODs a little bit yesterday and realized that I'm probably going to make this window a little smaller. Because, brushing the hair, shaving, these things would be good. So now I'll log in. So I log in as Frank Jones. And luckily, quite luckily, I remembered that I set the password. So there we go, accept permissions. So if I hit F12, you're under the window, aren't you? Hit F12, I'll have a token. I can copy that token. Now I can go over here and go to tickets, and I can add a ticket. I can go into my bearer token and swap that out quickly. So now let's say the computer isn't working. Try turning it off and back on again. And it beeped. Oh, 403 forbidden. Why are you forbidden, Frank? That's not good. We already have tab. So Frank has no permissions because I haven't assigned permissions by default yet. So we go in here, we assign permissions to Frank, right? Let's give him everything. He can read tenants, he can do all sorts of stuff from Frank. And now I'm gonna have to re-authenticate because now I need that token refresh, right? Right? Or will it refresh for me? I think it might refresh for me. Let's test. There you go, there's my permissions. So now I copy that token and go over here and send. Hey, now we go to our system. Let's go to tickets, and there we go. There's our ticket. So we have permissions in place. We have the user being registered. The user is registered against the tenant that tenant is logged into now, and I can now pass that information up. So now what happens is when I actually log in, I track the tenant that's currently selected on the user, right? So in the user metadata, I actually track the tenant, and that's what it's for. User metadata is for some application data, but that's also passed in my token. So I have in the actions, in my flows, I have post user registration. Is it? No, it is login. Yes, I have a roles and permissions flow, and in here I inject the user metadata tenant. So in my token, you will have seen the tenant there. So that gets passed into the application. The application is obviously validating that this token is correct, and it then builds the permission, gets the permissions of this, and that determines what it can do. And there you go. That is the workflow. So I have user registration working. So what do I need to do next? Well, I really do want to work on those code generators, but I'm not going to do them on stream again for a while. If I find any information about how to work with them effectively, I will share that. The next steps will be I need to develop a story to represent this. So the funny thing is about what I'm doing here, I'm going to build an Agile management platform, right? An Agile platform for tracking stories. So the stories I develop only have to take me to the point where I can add stories to my own system, right? And it's partially why I don't want to do UI first, because I do not want to build this system around my needs. And if I start doing a UI, I'm going to make my decisions based off of what it looks like and not what the data is that I'm actually tracking. So at a certain point, I will switch over to literally dog fooding my own application. And if you haven't heard that term before, dog fooding is you are consuming your own product, good and bad, right? So I'm suffering through my own pains. But the problem is, again, and why I'm hoping that I can stay strong here is I have a tendency right now to stop and try and do the right thing. I'm not trying to do the quick thing. I'm not trying to rush this through to an actual product to be out to market tomorrow, right? I do not have any investment other than time and, the regular cost of doing this. So my goal is to continue building this application in the strongest possible way, continue building those APIs up, and that will allow me to build a strong backbone of the application. And then we can experiment with different UIs, right? I like using drinking my own wine. I've never heard that before. Good morning, Mr. Anhorn, by the way. I had more fun with generators today, so I actually ended up copying the classes and removing the generators and just using the classes to get this working today. Because the generators stopped being detected by mediator. So that was fun. I came up with it, that is why. It sounds less disgusting than dog fooding, to be honest. So, any other phrase, consuming your own product is the kind of is the nature of it. I don't know why it became dog fooding specifically. And I'm not looking that up on a stream. So there we go. We have throughout the course of this stream, we've laughed, we've cried. There's been pain. There's been, you know, success. So we do have a workflow that is coming together, right? The Saga did its job, right? Saga did everything it needed to do right this second. So this Saga, all this was a coordinator, right? As these events happened, it registered that they happened, and then when it handled the last message and this state was complete, it published this event. This event then got picked up, or this notification. It published this notification. This notification was picked up and published the event to Kafka, and then this Saga state was deleted. That's no longer necessary. So yeah, that is the current state of the application, and just about on time for today as well. So I'm going to try and note some stories down and try and be explicit about what I want. I think, and I'm open to opinions here. Have a good one. I'm switching strategy for staying awake. It's time to employ metal music. That's probably a lot more likely to keep you awake than my voice. May your C# code compile and database contain good JSON. Thank you, Thorolf. Thank you for hanging out. It's been great to have you in here. I appreciate it. Yeah, so the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to build upon the application as best as I know how. So I'm going to start with the ticketing component, right? So I want to take this system from ticket to story. In some cases, tickets can still be tickets, but a ticket will be a support ticket. It'll be here's a thing that needs to be done, right? If a ticket needs extra work, that ticket isn't just linked to another story, right? It is the story. It becomes the story. That's kind of the difference with what I'm trying to do, right? Any people who were alerted to that ticket, any people who care about that ticket could still be registered as notifiable entities on that ticket. As it promotes to product management and gets reviewed, it can then be added to, documents could be done, etc. It could be closed, but everybody who's allowed to know about it is notified. That's kind of the path I'm going to head down. So I'm going to start with tickets, build out a good solid ticketing piece from an API perspective, verify things like notifications, right? So I've got to figure out an epic around adding a ticket. I then got to figure out, okay, without trying to go too far, as I go, how would I evolve this into a I had a name for this in the interim. Kind of an interim story. It's not quite a story yet. It's in planning with product management, but it isn't a story. And then it evolves into an actual story that can be tracked. Epics are going to have to exist, obviously. Those are things that we use anyway. But the whole goal of this is to make sure that visibility is not lost, communication is not lost, accountability is where it needs to be. And yeah, and the entire phrase that got me started on this path was passing the ball. I was working on a piece of work that required another team to do something before I could do my work, but then I was constantly being harassed to chase after that other team member to do their job. Because my manager didn't know where that work stood, because as far as they could tell, that work was sat on me waiting to be done. It wasn't moving forward, it wasn't moving back, it was just sat there. So that's kind of where I want to focus. I want to focus on the visibility to everybody doing the application development. Okay, where is that story now? Without having to ask the developer, you can see it. If it's a collaborative piece, if another team has need to do something with it, it will show in their backlog as well. It will show in their stories as having a status. That's kind of the design I'm going for. And that's kind of my goal. Eflux, hello, good morning. I believe you've been around, I just don't think you've spoken. No? You just got up? work. Ugh, that's funny that we get into EF migrations at the end of this. We got onto the whole JSON topic, by the way. So, yeah. Is it a 12-hour stream? No, I wish it was. It is about to finish up. Um, I would love to, but unfortunately, I actually have a job as well. They kind of expect me to work, and you know, it's kind of necessary. So let's go see if anybody else is. Is anybody in the chat about to start streaming? If you are, start your stream, and we will raid over to you. If not, any suggestions? So I will return tomorrow. I will develop the story overnight, and I will be ready tomorrow morning to begin work on adding tickets. So I'll get this committed today and move forward with that piece. I think that at this stage I'm going to merge all my pull requests or my branches into the main and call it, actually, considering the amount of work that I've put into this, the amount of prototyping is now minimal, and I think that the workflow is good. I think I'm going to move forward with this as is, and step away from that kind of prototype aspect of it and start to actually build upon it. Yeah. Clayman Dev is live and doing Unity. Then that's right over there. So thank you very much for joining me. The link to the Discord is in the chat if you want to join the Discord and discuss this more. If you have any more questions about this stuff, I'm happy to answer them. Right, I'm happy to discuss doing this stuff. So feel free. I will return tomorrow. We will do more of this stuff. I will share the story planning end, not the actual story planning, because yuck. And yeah, we'll go and raid over to Clayman Dev on Twitch, who is doing Unity. I do not follow because I've not been tracking game developers for a long time. Let's go over there. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. This has been a fun stream. I'm glad we got some stuff done. So take care all. Have a great rest of your day. Great evening. Great morning. And I'll see you again soon. Thank you all.